Okie dokie. And yes, any new First Descendant viewers, I do look just as miserable as I sound. But a couple weeks ago, I was going to add the Freyna update to my calculator website for you guys to use, and I was going to add things like the 25% toxin resistance reduction that you can apply to enemies via her venom injection mod. I was also going to add things like the Nezaistra's Devotion 30% defense debuff that you can apply, and after going to code them out and apply them, I've noticed very quickly that nothing actually lined up, which frustrated the fuck out of me, because after spending the last 2 weeks trying to figure out what the fuck is going on, I have learned that everyone is wrong. Literally anyone who has told you about the 150 formula is fucking wrong. And it's actually astounding, because had anyone with an ounce of knowledge of how this game functions actually tried to test out the resistance values, they would have seen it. I don't know. I'm kind of sad, and I thought someone had already done it, because I started this game about a full month and a half after the release, so I came in way late to this party. It's wrong. It doesn't matter if you use the values I got in my latest boss DR video, or if you use the values on the TFT Tools website. Now, funnily enough, their values are actually correct, but before you sing them any praises, they have no clue why they're correct, and because of that, they can kind of eat a dick. Because if you're going to data mine values without testing them or connecting them to the game in some way, then you may as well have not done it at all. That said, let's explain why the defense formula as you know it is wrong, and why their values happen to be right. Because as you can see here, I've got a spread of regular gun damage for defense checks against all the bosses up to Molten. I've got fire damage, I've got fucking chill, electric toxin. The only thing I haven't tested out is non-attribute resistance, but the only place you'd really want to test that out on is pyro, because that's the only place where it's actually different than defense. But the idea here was I did a base test, which was usually like Nezaistra's Devotion, and then I had defense penetration factors like the Nezaistra's Devotion 30%, the battlesuit melting rounds from Sharon for another 40%, or even the electric status effect debuff, which is a 3% defense shred. And all shreds are additive, by the way. So if you have electric plus Sharon plus Nezaistra's, that is a 73% defense shred of the value. But typically for any given category, I tried to find whatever shreds I could get. So for defense, it was obviously Nezaistra's Devotion, battlesuit melting rounds. For fire, it was Enduring Legacy at max stacks. For chill, it was Clairvoyance, and the clairvoyances used were at different copy levels. So one was at level 1, which is a 25% reduction, but we had another guy who had his maxed, so that's a 40% reduction. We fiddled with shit there. On electric, we used battlesuit melting rounds, not on this sheet. I also tested the laundry effect from Valby, and that's a 20% there. And then on toxin, we have the venom injection effect from Freyna, which is 25%, and then we have the Python effect, which is a 38.7% total. And some of you are probably going to say, hey, that doesn't really add up. Python's bugged. It gives more than it says it does. The first stack gives a 3.6% toxin reduction on its first stack, and then it gives the 1.3% that it should on every subsequent stack. 3.6 it's a bug because it comes from the non-attribute side of the effect. When they will ever notice this, I don't know. But for everyone curious, Python is bugged. The first stack is 3.6%. Anyways, in order to make these data mined values actually work, we have to do some pretty stupid shit. And I need you to not ask how I figured this out, because I don't fucking know. But I found out that the end DR value, or damage taken, sorry, because the defense formula shits out a damage taken value. So if you have 20% damage taken, that means you have 80% damage reduction. Damage taken will always be the inverse here. So the defense formula, as you guys have used it, always churns out damage taken, never DR. If you want DR, you need to do 1 minus the value. Anyways, after a lot of fucking around, I was actually able to prove that the damage taken value that is output by the defense formula is limited to 4 decimals. And it is some fucking weird shit as to why that is, but I was able to prove it. The only problem I did have was proving how those 4 decimals were determined. Did it just fucking kill all the decimals after the 4th? Did it round? Did it do a floor? Did it ceiling? Did it round to an increment? I had no fucking clue. And in a game like this, there are any number of ways that they could have rule sets for how rounding is handled. And because of that, I almost gave up. And a huge shout out to TFT Maths on Twitter, good math friend of mine. They help me out a lot when I am curious about some stuff I'm working on and I want to just have it peer reviewed, make sure I'm not fucking nuts. And I had them look at this, and at first they thought I was fucking out of my mind. But then they quickly saw that I was right about the 4 decimals. And then we got chatting about how the fuck could we make this work. And he almost gave up as well, but then he had a great idea. He said, what if we limit the decimals on the inverse? So rather than limiting the decimals on damage taken, what if we flip it to DR first, limit the decimals decimals there and then flip it back. And unfucking believably, it actually works. Now, there's a slight caveat with defense specifically, but we'll talk about that in a second. And it's because of this that we're able to go through and see that all of these shred sources all line up. So the defense formula, as you know, it isn't actually 150 over the 150 plus the square root and all that shit. It's 1 minus all of that, and then the end value is truncated to 4 decimals. You don't round, well, technically I guess it's flooring, you could argue, but you limit it to 4 decimals in the DR state, and then if you want damage taken, you flip it back. That might sound stupid, and frankly it fucking is. I'm annoyed it took me this long to find that, but a great way to prove, other than the fact that we can line it up on fucking everything here, is Python. Now Python, I actually went and shot Devourer, a level 1 Order of Truth in the lab, and another level 1 Immortality in the lab, and I shot them for every single stack of Devourer, so 28 stacks plus base, so 29, and then I shot them again with Venom Injection only from Freyna for 25%, and then with Venom Injection and Python, and everything lines up here. And it's because of shit like this that we can see that if we had this wrong, when we have all these different increments, all these tiny little variances in the defense shred, if we were wrong, we would see things not lining up at least once in here, but they're all right. So the data mined values are actually correct. The unfortunate part is that nobody actually fucking knew how to use them, which I'm more than a little peeved about. But let's talk about defense, because I believe, now this is really fucking hard to prove, I believe defense has different rules than all the resistances, because all the resistances, including all the Python stacks and all this fuckery between very extremely different resistances, all of this lines up. But if you apply all of this to everything, then it'll still line up everywhere else, but defense alone will have some very specific points where it breaks. And the long and short of it is, for defense to line up, and for defense alone, we have to make it so while in the DR state, before we flip it back to damage taken, we have to push the ceiling on the nearest 0.00001. It's fucking stupid, I know, but this is the only way that defense actually lines up. And it's only on very specific decimal breakpoints, and it's only on defense. I have no fucking clue. So it's because of shit like this that I believe that defense alone has its own rule set, but it is possible that there is some crouching tiger hidden string of complete bullshit, million hoops you have to jump through, that I'm just not aware of, that will give you a uniform rule set for all of this. And if anyone thinks they can figure that out, please do. I'll be waiting. But yeah, I am insanely fucking tired. If I seem like a mess, it's because I am. All I wanted to do was come out and say that, once again, everyone is indeed fucking wrong. Even the people who happen to be right, because they still didn't know why they were right. But I will be updating my values on my website, because the values there were under the assumption that the 150 formula as it was correct, and now we know it isn't. And if anyone thinks they can prove me wrong on this, please, for the love of fuck, do. We will all be better for it. Do I think I'm wrong on the overall structure of how all of this is handled? Fuck no. Good luck disproving it, but you never know.